Speaking of Star Wars, have you heard of the Mark McCandless story?
No.
And Brad Sorensen. Okay,
No.
This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest alien reproduction vehicle stories of all time. And we can also, I'm sure you've heard the term alien reproduction vehicle.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've heard it associated with Greer.
Yes.
But we can dispel that rumor as well in this story. So this is about November 12th, 1988. This takes place at the Norton Air Force Base show at Norton Air Force Base in California. This is near Edwards Air Force Base. This is near Palm Springs. This is near the Lockheed Skunk Works. This is near USAF Plant 42. You know, a lot of the clandestine aircraft R&D of our nation takes place. Also a region in which I think is a huge network of underground subterranean facilities. But, you know, we'll talk about that later. But so Aerospace Illustrator Mark McCandless, who had done a lot of work for Popular Mechanics, various defense contractors, was scheduled to go to the Air Force show with his good friend Brad Sorensen, who was an industrial designer at the time. Brad Sorensen had been invited to the show from a high-profile client. It doesn't really name this person, but connected with DOD somehow, possibly former Undersecretary for Defense, real high-up guy. A couple days before the air show, Mark McCandless has to drop out. He needs to do some work for Popular Mechanics. And so Brad goes with, you know, the undersec, if that's what it is. A week later, Mark finally hears from Brad. Brad sounds really like beaten up and shaken. Brad sounds really, really, really upset. And Mark finally pries what Brad saw at the air show. And we'll pause there because historically, this story has been relayed secondhand from Mark McCandless, right? Mark McCandless talks about what Brad sees at the air show. It wasn't until this year I found a 1990 interview took place 2 years after this experience with Brad Sorensen and Aviation Week and space technology writer Bill Scott. So this is no longer a secondhand testimony relayed by Mark McCandless, right? This is something that from Brad Sorensen's own words, because I'm directly referencing that interview. Because that's some of the things people have said about this story in particular, the flux liner, is that no, Mark McCandless just said it. No, well, Brad Sorensen talked about it in this interview, and some of the details around that are really interesting. So Brad Sorensen went to the Norton Air Show, tons of interesting aircraft, pretty cool. But at some point during the show, the Undersec Def or whoever he was with took him to a classified exhibit. This is either a short flight down to USAF Plant 42 or it's in a completely different hangar. And the only reason he gets in is because he's attached to this very high-level former DOD guy. The two enter the hangar, and remember, this is all according to Brad Sorensen. And in there's a lot of really interesting vehicles. There's like a VTOL vertical takeoff and landing little Marines vehicle. There's the losing prototype to the B-2 stealth bomber. There's something called the Lockheed Pulsar, which is a craft that looks like a pumpkin seed. Craft that is, I think, powered by, if I'm remembering correctly, scramjet technology, super fast, remotely controlled. It contains 121 nuclear warheads.
What?
That's some of the military brass were kind of boasting that they could destroy every major city in Russia in under an hour and so forth. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the Pulsar. And that's drawn by Mark McCandless. That's drawn by Mark.
That's wild, bro. Have you seen the Cormorant, the Lockheed Cormorant?
What is that?
I think Jeremy Riss told me about this.
Oh, alien scientist.
Yeah.
Smart cookie.
Yeah, man. He knows his stuff. He type in Lockheed Cormorant. That one's crazy looking.
Whoa.
That thing.
Whoa.
I think these are all obvious. Or that one's actually a real photo.
Is this a undersea UAV?
Yeah, bro. Look at that. Look at that thing.
It looks like a bird. Of course, the Lockheed Martin stamp on it, iconic.
Yeah, right. That thing's crazy. There's just so much bizarre stuff.
I know.
These people are making. But apparently this thing can go in the water and in the air.
There's a Northrop. It's transmedium?
Yeah, bro.
Whoa.
It flies and it goes under the water. Allegedly. Who knows?
That is a creepy looking vehicle. It looks like almost like a bird, but also a little sci-fi high techy.
Yeah, like the more I see this stuff, bro, it just seems like there's a human explanation for so many of this UFO, so much of this UFO
I think
stuff.
so, yeah.
I had this guy David Morehouse on a couple times, and he worked in the Stargate program.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he came in here with like a whole presentation of classified military aircraft and reconnaissance balloons and all kinds of things that he basically explained away most of like the most famous UFO sightings ever,
really,
including the Phoenix Lights. He showed us like images of these giant balloons that have lights built in them, and they're like reconnaissance balloons or something like this. And it was the exact shape of the Phoenix Lights flying
like
bees, same exact size, just giant black like tube balloons.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I agree with you that a lot of what's seen is a pretty mundane, prosaic explanation or classified military tech, that a lot of it regarding on how anomalous it is, how anomalous the sighting is probably some reverse engineered stuff. Because so Brad Sorensen sees the Lockheed Pulsar, which seems like the same crazy technology as that Lockheed Cormorant. And then he's brought to the final section of the exhibit, where there are 3 flying saucers stationed hovering off the ground, right? These look like a Jello mold with half a dome on top. Steve, would you look up flux liner? 2 words. These things are called Little Bear, Mama Bear, and Papa Bear because they're the same craft scaled. One's about 60 feet in length to the largest about 120 feet in length.
This?
Yeah. You've probably seen that image before, right?
I've seen this. I've seen the drawing before. Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
That is the flux liner. So there's a 3-star general and contracting personnel there that are showing a videotape of, I think it's the smallest flux liner, kind of bouncing jaggedly over like a desert surface before taking off at rapid speeds, just straight up. So this thing to Brad Sorensen, and Brad Sorensen hated this design because he talks nonstop in his interview that it looks like it was made by scientists, not by engineers. It looked slobbled together. There was chipped paint on it.
Yeah.
Those little bubbles on the outside were synthetic vision systems. They're camera arrays that to kind of create a 3D picture of where the craft going. Yeah. Those seats are F4 Phantom jump seats. So this craft was like jerry-rigged. That little ball handle right there, it's really interesting in Tom DeLonge's book, names escape me right now, Secret Machines. He talks about that same control system right there is used to control like the TR-3B like reverse engineered triangle. But so these craft are powered, I don't really understand the physics, but by like some anti-gravity capacitor array and so forth. And the skinny that Brad Sorensen is given is that these craft were created from technology found at Roswell. And that I think the brass were saying that, we were never supposed to have these craft. We took it from the beans. We've tried to recreate how it works. This is the best we can get it. It's basically a poor man's representation. This craft has cameras slapped on the outside and like acrylic bubbles you'd find at a Walmart. Yeah. It has jump seats from a jet. It has a Navy submarine door on the outside, but we have tried to reverse engineer the propulsion systems of these craft as well as possible. And these, according to Brad Sorensen, according to what he saw, these were copy vehicles taken from non-human intelligence at Roswell.
What year was this again?
1988.
1988.
But what's interesting here is that this craft right here, Steve, can you look up 1967 Harvey Williams? In 1967, USAF captain, Air Force Captain Harvey Williams, about 12,000 to 20,000 feet over Provo, Utah, captured an image of a flying saucer that looks exactly like one of these. But it looks like an evolution of the flux liner because it has larger acrylic bubbles. And as time passes, you'd think camera technology size would decrease and you can kind of rethink the acrylic bubbles. But this is the story of the flux liner, and Mark McCandlish would draw what Brad told him because Brad didn't want anything to do with this story. So Mark McCandlish would draw this. He would take this around. He would present it at Greer's Disclosure Project. He would talk. Yes, that's the first image right there, 1966, Provo, Utah.
Okay,
right there. That's taken by USAF Captain. If it's not Harvey Williams, I'm butchering this badly. There's a much higher definition.
That looks like it.
Image
same shape.
Yeah. So Mark McCandlish would create a line art drawing of this. And he would take it all around, talk to people. And apparently he met other people like USAF veteran Kent Sellin, who saw the same craft at Edwards Air Force Base. And I think 1972, I want to say, I'm trying to remember correctly, but Mark McCandlish would eventually in 2014 create a documentary with a filmmaker named James Allen about, 0-point energy systems, the flux liner alien reproduction vehicles. About less than 3 months before before the documentary is to be released, James Allen gets struck with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer and dies within 3 months. And Mark McCandlish ordered an autopsy report on him. So did the editor of the documentary that I've talked to. And James Allen was found to have heavy metal poisoning in his autopsy report. So it's weird because in this documentary, the two, James Allen and Mark McCandlish, talk all about, various energy systems, various zero-point energy systems where the inventors have mysteriously died, gone missing, throw themselves out of a window. And so James Allen, right before that documentary is released, goes, he dies as well. In 2020, Mark McCandlish was found with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
What?
And he said, maybe it was 2022, but he said that in an interview shortly before in 2020 that he slept with a pillow under his pillow because he was also afraid of what was going to happen to him.
A pillow under his pillow?
I'm sorry, a pistol under his pillow.
Oh, a pistol under his pillow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And, there's some rumors, according to some close sources of Mark McCandlish, that he was going to testify to Senator Rubio shortly before his death. So, but this also gets really interesting because this was relayed by Mark McCandlish for the better part of 30 years, right? I found the original interview with Brad Sorensen and Bill Scott from Aviation Week and Space Technology. Mm-hmm. Once I find that and put up a video of the Fluxliner, I get a call from a UFO researcher, very well-known guy, very respected, great on crash retrieval, but he's also really close with Greer. Like really good buddies with Greer. And he calls me and said, where did you find that interview? Like, that's not supposed to be public. You should take that down. Why isn't that supposed to be public? Because this story was always secondhand with Mark McCandlish and not Brad Sorensen. And what's weirder is one
of Greer's close friends is a researcher. And why did he tell you it should be taken down?
He said it's internal.
Internal for who?
Exactly. Why? Because I messaged Brad Sorensen. I emailed.
Right.
And the amount of death threats that man gave me is unlimited.
What man?
Brad Sorensen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, say goodbye to you and your family. You'll never see it coming. Mark was a stupid, dramatic fool. You're going to end up the same way he did. And then I kept pushing. Because there was some little inkling that I thought maybe there's more than meets the eye to Brad here. And so Brad kind of gave me a little bit of the implication. He may have actually worked on such a craft, saying stuff like I helped create what I saw and stuff like that. It's an incredibly intriguing case, the Fluxliner. Wow. Incredibly intriguing. And that's just one instance of a alien reproduction vehicle.